This story began on the evening of September 27th, 2020. At around 6 p.m., emergency services received a frantic call. A Manatee County resident told the dispatcher that his neighbor had run to his house in a panic. Through tears, she begged for help, saying she had just escaped from her husband after he attacked her inside their home. But from the very beginning, something about the scene raised questions. Despite her emotional state, the woman didn't appear to be completely defenseless. She was gripping a handgun tightly in her hands. When deputies arrived at the house, they found a man in the bedroom suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. One bullet had struck his leg, another his chest, and a third had hit his right arm. Investigators also recovered 2 bullets lodged in the wall and 4 spent .45 caliber shell casings. The man was rushed to the hospital, but despite the doctor's efforts, he could not be saved. About an hour later, he died from his injuries. While the medical team fought to save his life, investigators carefully processed the house, trying to reconstruct what had happened. The woman was interviewed several times, but she avoided fully cooperating with law enforcement. Even so, she was not arrested that night. Detectives first wanted to determine whether her claim of self-defense was supported by the evidence. It didn't take long for investigators to identify the people involved. The woman was Ashley Benefield, and the man who died was her husband, Douglas Benefield. But was Ashley truly left with no other choice that evening? Or was there far more to the self-defense claim than it first appeared? To answer that question, we need to go back several years. It all began in August 2016 in Florida. At a Republican Party charity event in Palm Beach, Ashley Byers met Douglas Benefield. After they had dinner together, Douglas asked for her phone number. They started texting that very evening, and before long, those conversations turned into a romance. At the time, Ashley was 24 years old. She worked for Donald Trump's presidential campaign in Sarasota, organizing campaign rallies and working with evangelical communities to encourage voter participation. But politics was only one part of her life. Ashley had trained in ballet since childhood, performed with the Maryland Youth Ballet, and dreamed of one day founding her own professional ballet company. More than anything else, that was the future she wanted to build. Douglas was nearly 3 decades older than Ashley. A Charleston native and former United States Navy pilot, he built a successful career after leaving the military as a consultant for technology companies and defense contractors. He also invested in real estate and owned several restaurants. The year before, he had lost his wife and was raising his 15-year-old daughter, Ava, on his own. Despite the significant age difference, Ashley and Douglas connected almost immediately. They shared similar political views, conservative values, and a mutual interest in firearms. Their relationship moved incredibly fast. Just 13 days after meeting, they decided to get married. The wedding was a small, private ceremony in Charleston. The only guest was Douglas's close friend, Trip Cormany, who was serving as an Episcopal pastor at the time. He openly questioned whether the couple was rushing into marriage, and even tried to talk Douglas out of it. In the end, though, he agreed to officiate the ceremony. For Douglas, whose Christian faith was deeply important, being legally married before starting a life together with Ashley was a matter of principle. The news of the wedding came as a complete surprise to family and friends. Douglas didn't even invite his own daughter. Ava was just 15 years old. She was still struggling with the loss of her mother. Only 9 months earlier, after returning home from school, she had found Renee unresponsive. Doctors later determined that an undiagnosed heart condition had caused her death. So learning that her father had married a woman who was only 9 years older than she was became another painful blow for Eva. After Ashley moved into Douglas's home, the relationship between her and her stepdaughter began to deteriorate almost immediately. Living under the same roof quickly turned into a series of constant conflicts. Ashley made little effort to become a second mother or even a trusted adult in Eva's life. At the same time, Eva felt that the special bond she had always shared with her father was slowly slipping away. Meanwhile, Ashley never gave up on her dream of starting her own ballet company. Douglas genuinely admired his young wife and was willing to do whatever he could to help make that dream a reality. He surrounded her with attention, planned romantic evenings, filled the house with flowers, and constantly reminded her that she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Tall, slender, and remarkably graceful, Ashley naturally stood out wherever she went. Her effortless elegance, long chestnut hair, and striking blue eyes drew people's attention without trying. To Douglas, she seemed like the perfect combination of beauty and genuine kindness. Before long, his support began to pay off. Combining Douglas's business experience with Ashley's professional ambitions, the couple founded the American National Ballet in Charleston. They announced a nationwide search for dancers, hoping to build not only a non-profit ballet company, but also a full-scale commercial ballet academy. The first auditions began in the summer of 2017. Around the same time, another major milestone changed their lives. Ashley became pregnant. Starting a family meant just as much to her as building her own ballet company. So more and more of her attention shifted toward the baby she was expecting. By the end of the summer, dozens of dancers from around the world had arrived in Charleston, many of them specifically hoping to work with Ashley. But she never appeared at a single audition. Instead, Douglas found himself handling every organizational responsibility on his own. To prepare the dancers, he brought in experienced ballet master Michael Wise. Many of the performers had joined the company because they wanted to train with Ashley, but she made it clear from the beginning that complications during her pregnancy would keep her away from rehearsals. For the foreseeable future, she planned to focus entirely on her health. Even as the relationship between Ashley and Eva grew more strained, Douglas remained completely devoted to his wife's dream. He continued investing his time, energy, and money into building the ballet company in Charleston that Ashley envisioned. A company she believed would introduce an entirely new approach to the world of classical ballet. Douglas himself had no background in ballet, so running the organization proved to be far more difficult than he had expected. He hired experienced choreographers and an administrative team, trying to build the company from the ground up. Before long, however, serious disputes began to surface. Several dancers and choreographers filed lawsuits, claiming the couple had failed to honor the terms of their contracts. According to them, they had been hired only to be dismissed a few weeks later, without receiving what had been promised. After Ashley stepped away from the company, Douglas tried to keep the project alive by completely replacing its leadership. The new management gradually reshaped the organization according to its own vision, and Ashley's original idea of creating a ballet company that welcomed performers of different nationalities and body types slowly faded away. A project that had been designed to challenge tradition was rapidly losing the very qualities that had made it unique. While Douglas was unsuccessfully trying to keep the ballet company afloat, life at home was becoming increasingly difficult. Arguments between Ashley and Eva became more frequent, leaving Douglas caught between the two people who meant the most to him. During one particularly emotional confrontation, once again centered around Eva, Douglas suddenly lost his composure and fired a single shot into the ceiling of his own home. People who knew him well would later say that this behavior was completely out of character. They consistently described him as calm, level-headed, and someone who avoided conflict. In late August 2017, Ashley left for her mother's home in Florida, explaining that complications with her pregnancy made the move necessary. Douglas stayed behind in Charleston, trying to save the struggling ballet company while also dealing with mounting financial pressure. On October 23rd, the leadership of the American National Ballet called the dancers to an unexpected meeting. Before it began, everyone was asked to sign non-disclosure agreements. Shortly afterward, most of them were informed that their positions had been eliminated. Not long after that, Ashley publicly distanced herself from everything that was happening. In a series of social media posts, she sharply criticized the company's new leadership and did not spare Douglas either. According to Ashley, the people placed in charge had destroyed everything she and Douglas had worked so hard to build. She said she could no longer support either their decisions or the way they were running the organization. She reminded her followers that the American National Ballet had been created as an alternative to traditional ballet companies, where treating performers with respect was supposed to be its guiding principle. In her view, the new leadership had completely abandoned that vision. A project that had recently looked like the realization of a lifelong dream was falling apart right before everyone's eyes. Just a few months later, the story of the American National Ballet officially came to an end. The financial impact was significant. By various estimates, Douglas lost more than $100,000 that he had invested in launching the company. That marked the end of a project he had devoted nearly all of his time and energy to. Before the ballet company officially shut down, Douglas organized a small farewell gathering for the dancers and staff. After months of working together, many of them had become genuinely important to him. But what waited for him after he returned home that evening was even harder to face. Instead of finding his pregnant wife, Douglas found a 4-page letter. In it, Ashley laid out a detailed list of complaints about their marriage. She accused him of being overly controlling, possessive, and emotionally manipulative. She also brought up the incident when he fired the shot into the ceiling, writing that it was after that moment she began to fear for her own safety and for the safety of the daughter she was expecting. At the end of the letter, Ashley said she had made the decision to leave. For Douglas, it was a devastating blow. But it soon became clear that Ashley's farewell letter was only the beginning of a long and bitter conflict. The months that followed were even more difficult. Douglas soon found himself facing accusations he never imagined he would hear from his own wife. In late November 2017, despite their separation, Douglas decided to make one more attempt at reconciliation. Knowing how much Ashley loved tea, he sent her a birthday gift that included an elegant teapot, fine porcelain teacups with matching saucers, and a specialty herbal tea that was marketed for expectant mothers. Ashley accepted the package, but she rejected his attempt to repair their relationship. Instead, she accused Douglas of trying to poison her through the tea. Those claims were investigated, but authorities found no evidence to support the allegation. The story didn't end there. Ashley later sent samples of her own hair to an independent laboratory to test for toxic substances. The report did note elevated levels of aluminum, zinc, and several other metals. However, it did not determine where those substances came from, nor did it support the claim that anyone had intentionally poisoned her. 3 weeks before her expected due date, Ashley checked herself into a general hospital in Tampa without telling Douglas. She told the medical staff that she was concerned about the health of the daughter she was expecting. According to Ashley, the pregnancy had supposedly been affected by exposure to heavy metals because her husband had intentionally poisoned her. At the same time, Ashley began making several other serious allegations. She claimed that Douglas had physically assaulted her, kept her against her will inside their Charleston home and exercised complete control over every aspect of her life. Even after she moved to Florida, while Douglas was hundreds of miles away, Ashley continued to claim that he was still following and harassing her. Because hospital administrators had no immediate way to verify those allegations, they decided to take additional security precautions. To protect Ashley's location, she was admitted under the alias Christina. 3 days later, doctors performed a cesarean section, and she gave birth to a healthy daughter. But even after the birth, Ashley continued insisting that her daughter might have been affected by the alleged poisoning during the pregnancy. Despite everything that was happening, Douglas refused to give up on his family. Time and again, he sent Ashley messages asking her to give their marriage one more chance. In his mind, they were still a family that could be saved. He truly believed they could start over, even as that hope became more distant with each passing day. Ashley, however, had already made up her mind. She had no intention of returning to Douglas. Instead of trying to repair the relationship, she continued contacting various government agencies, making new allegations against him. This time, she claimed that Douglas's older daughter, Eva, had been subjected to inappropriate treatment. As a result, the Florida Department of Children and Families opened an investigation. Ashley also gave investigators a detailed account of what she described as Douglas's angry outbursts, once again bringing up the incident when he fired a shot into the ceiling. During the investigation, everyone involved was interviewed, including Eva and Douglas himself. The incident was thoroughly investigated, but authorities found no grounds to file any charges. In addition, Douglas voluntarily underwent a comprehensive psychological evaluation. The examining specialist found no signs of mental illness or a tendency toward aggressive behavior, concluding that Douglas was mentally healthy and did not pose a danger to others. That outcome was not what Ashley had hoped for. Soon afterward, Douglas received another lengthy letter from her. In the final paragraphs, Ashley made it clear that he was not to contact her again or make any further attempts to reconnect. If he did, she wrote, she would contact law enforcement once more. After reading that letter, Douglas had little doubt left. His wife had no intention of reconciling or coming back. By the summer of 2018, their conflict had reached a new stage. The former spouses faced each other in a Bradenton courtroom. Douglas was asking the court for the opportunity to see his newborn daughter, while Ashley requested that all contact between Douglas and the baby be restricted. Over the course of 2 days, the court heard testimony from both sides and reviewed the evidence, including laboratory reports Ashley had submitted in an effort to support her claim that she had been poisoned. Judge Diana Moreland, however, found that evidence insufficient. She stated that the court had not been presented with credible evidence showing that Ashley had ever been poisoned or suffered from any medical condition caused by toxic substances. The ruling was a significant victory for Douglas. For the first time in a long while, he was granted the opportunity to see his daughter. A few days later, the visit was arranged outside the sheriff's office. And that's when something happened that no one saw coming. Ashley was unexpectedly calm and friendly. She walked up to Douglas on her own, warmly placed their daughter in his arms, and even suggested they spend some time together. From the outside, it looked as though the long-running conflict might finally be coming to an end. For almost the entire following year, it genuinely seemed that Douglas and Ashley had found a way to get along for the sake of their daughter. Wanting to stay close to her, while also respecting Ashley's personal space, Douglas rented an apartment nearby in Florida. But that sense of peace didn't last. In August 2019, Douglas arrived to pick up his daughter and noticed something unexpected. Ashley was wearing a wedding ring. The discovery caught him completely off guard. Confused and looking for answers, he hired a private investigator. After conducting surveillance, the investigator reported that Ashley was involved in a relationship with another man. A few months later, in November 2019, Douglas officially filed for divorce. Almost immediately afterward, a new wave of allegations began. Ashley once again contacted law enforcement. This time, she accused Douglas of inappropriate behavior involving their young daughter, along with several other very serious allegations. Douglas firmly denied every claim. After another investigation, authorities once again stated that they had found no evidence to support the accusations. By the spring of 2020, the situation had become even more unusual. In March, Douglas sent a letter to the sheriff's office expressing concern about Ashley's mental well-being. He wrote that he believed she might be struggling with serious psychological issues. Then, just a few months later, something happened that no one in their circle expected. Douglas told friends that he and Ashley had decided to give their relationship another chance. For the sake of their daughter, they planned to become a family again and move from Florida to Maryland. The news left everyone who knew them puzzled. Even so, those close to the couple hoped that after years of court hearings and mutual accusations, they had finally found a way to move forward. Then came September 27th, 2020. That day, Douglas was preparing for the move. Together with Ashley, their young daughter, and Ashley's mother, Alicia, they were planning to leave from Maryland, hoping to start over. At around 5:30 that evening, Douglas arrived at Alicia's house to help pack. For a while, everything appeared completely normal. Boxes were gradually being filled. Belongings were carried toward the door, and the atmosphere seemed calm and peaceful. A short time later, Alicia decided to take her granddaughter to a nearby park, leaving Ashley and Douglas alone in the house. According to Ashley, that's when everything changed. She told Douglas that the move would happen without him. Ashley later said those words immediately sent Douglas into a rage. He began yelling that they had to move together as a family. Then he started moving the packed boxes around the house. According to Ashley, she tried to leave, but Douglas grabbed her left arm, pulled her back, and demanded to know where she thought she was going. She also claimed that he pointed his finger at her, as though he were scolding her, and said, "You can't leave me." Ashley later said that was the moment she truly became afraid for her safety. She ran into the bedroom, where she kept a handgun that she legally owned. After grabbing the firearm, Ashley pointed it at Douglas and told him to leave her alone immediately and walk out of the house. But according to her account, Douglas didn't stop. Instead, he continued moving toward her, trying to calm her down. That's when Ashley fired. She later said she saw Douglas suddenly lose his balance and collapse to the floor, as if his legs had simply given out beneath him. Immediately afterward, Ashley ran outside and rushed to a neighboring house, crying out for help. At that moment, 2 neighbors were walking their dogs. They later said they saw Ashley run from the house, crying, with a handgun still in her hands, desperately asking someone to call the police. What actually happened inside that house on the evening of September 27th, 2020, is known only to Ashley Benefield. But investigators were never convinced by her account. 5 weeks after the shooting, Ashley was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. She pleaded not guilty, maintaining that she had acted solely in self-defense. In 2023, Ashley's defense team asked the court to dismiss the case, arguing that she had acted in self-defense. Her attorneys presented photographs of her alleged injuries, along with documents and other materials they said demonstrated a pattern of Douglas's aggressive behavior. Prosecutors, however, argued that Douglas was unarmed and that the location of his gunshot wounds did not support the claim that he posed an immediate threat. The judge denied the request, allowing the case to move forward to a jury. In July 2024, the jury found Ashley not guilty of second-degree murder, but convicted her of manslaughter with a firearm. That December, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. Her request for a new trial was denied, and her attorneys filed an appeal. Ashley continues to maintain that she acted in self-defense, but the conviction remains in effect while the appeal process continues.